Founded at the turn of the 20th century, Blackton was a freedom colony in southern New Mexico formed by black settlers hoping to escape the Jim Crow South. This week on the show, New Mexico in Focus correspondent Russell Contreras sits down with Dr. Timothy Nelson to talk about his new book, Blackton, New Mexico, The Significance of the Afro-Frontier, which explains how the colony's goals grew and shifted between 1900 and 1930. Before we air the interview, a brief disclaimer: Dr. Nelson uses a racial slur while recounting a headline in a Texas newspaper announcing the creation of Blackton. We felt it was important for you to see Dr. Nelson fully describing the way Blackton was received at the time. Here's Russell.
Dr. Timothy Nelson, thank you for joining us here at New Mexico in Focus.
Thank you for having me.
And congratulations on your new book, Blackton, New Mexico, The Significance of the Afro-Frontier, 1900 to 1930. First off, Blackton was a town in what people say the middle of nowhere, settled by black people. What was Blackton and who settled there?
First, we have to start with Blackton was a real place because my brother thought I made that up. But Blackton was this, 1800s notion of promised land at first. And then it transitioned into an investment vehicle. It was always an investment vehicle where black ambitions are nurtured and circulated amongst each other. So it was a promised land, but it was also a place where black people can live out their striving.
Who settled there and where did they come from?
Settling was a diversity of people. First, there was the population who was born under the institutions of slavery out of the South, Texas, Midwest. And then you had a few cohorts come through. Some were the ultra-literate black folks who were traveling from New York to California and stopped in Blackton because of what they had heard about it in the Crisis magazine or in the black press. You had a lot of women, also including women who were on the homesteads themselves as well. So there was a diverse population of black folks.
Now, in the early 1900s, we're just one generation removed from enslavement. And at this time, black people had some options to migrate to various places. Why did some choose Blackton?
Mostly because it was a territory. So in a territory, the normal Jim Crow laws don't necessarily apply in the same way. So crossing over from a Texas, for example, into New Mexico was generally considered Jim Crow free, but in the local folklore or agreements, gentlemen agreements, the Pecos River was the end of the Jim Crow line, and I can go through that a little bit later too. But so Blackton is located 5 miles west of the Pecos, and so it's the place where you end up with people who are not just black, for example, but people who cannot claim whiteness.
Mm. And where was it located in terms of modern day towns?
Modern day, okay, we'll talk about modern day. Dexter, New Mexico is directly east 5 miles. North, you have 20 miles north is Roswell, 20 miles south is Artesia, 80 miles, 60 miles is Carlsbad. So basically that 285 line from Roswell into Carlsbad.
You mentioned in the book that this was the coming together of black Americans from other cities across the country, but there's also another encounter of black people from Latin America, or a place that used to be part of Mexico. Who were these people and how did they form Blackton?
How much time do we have? When we're talking about Blackton, I contextualize it as Mexico's northern frontier. And so what you end up with are people who are black indigenous, black Mexicanos. It's just it's an intersection of blackness happening in Blackton, including some Irish immigrants who are also integrated into the family. So what directly do you want me to answer about the population?
When they came together, was there an encounter of some sort? Did they see each other as one, or were there cultural differences?
Generally, they came together because of their consciousness. One of the things was church was very important. and then you had a military background. So if you have this in your background or in your family, it ends up being part of how we begin communing. And then you have the Black Freemasons. So within those institutions, you have a lot of community help, apprenticeships, when people come in and it's their first time and they want to learn how to farm, for example. So it's a community of people who are nurturing the different identities that are going on there. And it's mostly around the consciousness that they maintain within.
You mentioned lack of Jim Crow laws, de facto, but there's also lack of infrastructure, a lot of lack of water. What was life like in Blackdom when it first started?